Okay, so let's talk about Sant Rampal Ji Maharaj. He is, without a doubt, one of the most polarizing figures in modern Indian spirituality. I mean, to his followers, he's a spiritual revolutionary, a true saint for our time. But to his critics, he's a criminal mastermind hiding behind religious robes. Today, we're going to dive into the story that his followers tell, a narrative designed to push back against the massive storm of controversy that swirls around him.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? How can one man be seen as a divine guide by hundreds of thousands of people, but at the same time be painted as the villain in this huge saga of crime and deception? Using material directly from his supporters, we're going to explore their side of this really complex and deeply divided story.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the controversy itself. Then, we'll walk through the allegations about his personal life, get into the really serious legal charges, touch on the theological disputes, and finally, look at the case his supporters make for him as a major social reformer.
So to really get a handle on the defense of Sant Rampal, you've got to start with where all these accusations even came from. According to his followers, this isn't just a legal fight, it's an information war. The core argument from his supporters is pretty straightforward. The negative image you've probably seen of Sant Rampal, they say it's not real. They claim it's a deliberately crafted narrative, one that's been fueled by rival spiritual leaders who feel threatened by him, and then, of course, amplified by a media that's just chasing ratings.
And this whole idea of a conspiracy, it really starts with the attacks on his personal lifestyle, claims that seem designed to paint a picture of hypocrisy and, well, decadence.
You've probably heard this one. It was one of the most notorious stories out there, the milk bath. His followers, though, they call this a complete and total fabrication. They argue that not only is there zero proof, but it goes directly against his core teachings, which demand this profound respect for food. So much so that followers pray before and after meals and make sure nothing is ever wasted.
But the story didn't just fade away. According to the source material we're looking at, the media channels that spread this rumor were later forced to apologize in court. They apparently admitted that the whole story was just unsubstantiated hearsay, published simply to boost their ratings.
So, what about the attacks on his supposed life of luxury? Well, his followers frame these as just simple practicalities. I mean, in the blistering heat of Haryana, air conditioning isn't exactly a luxury, right? It's a necessity, especially for large gatherings. And that so-called swimming pool, they say it was actually a large water reservoir for the basic hygiene of the thousands of devotees who visited, not some personal pool for him.
But you know, the allegations go way beyond lifestyle choices. Now we're going to turn to the extremely serious legal charges that led to that massive standoff at his ashram and, ultimately, his arrest.
This was a huge one, and maybe the most damaging allegation. It created this really sinister narrative of gross violations of privacy happening right inside the ashram. His followers, though, argued this was a masterclass in media manipulation. They claim the camera shown in all those news reports was actually positioned at the main gate for general security. The report, they allege, spliced this footage with shots of the women's bathroom area to create a false and sinister story. And they say you can still go visit the site today to verify it for yourself. And when it comes to the materials supposedly found in the ashram, his supporters point to just one thing: the legal outcome. While media reports were swirling about all these illegal items, he was fully acquitted under the Drugs and Cosmetics Act. For them, that's definitive proof that the portrayal was just deeply misleading.
Now, the standoff at the ashram was really fueled by this incredibly grave accusation that thousands of people, including women and children, were being used as human shields and held against their will. And here we see the absolute core of the legal defense. The source really hammers this point home. In the specific cases dealing with wrongful confinement, which is the legal term for holding someone against their will, Sant Rampal was completely acquitted. For his followers, that legal verdict closes the case on the matter, period.
To counter any comparisons to other gurus who have been convicted of sexual assault, the source points to this public retraction. A news outlet allegedly accused him of rape, only to print a formal apology the very next day stating the information was not correct. His supporters use this to argue there has never, ever been a credible charge of this nature against him.
So, beyond all the legal battles, a deep theological war was also being fought. A common accusation is that Sant Rampal is anti-Hindu because he critiques mainstream practices and even some deities.
And this really gets to the heart of the whole theological conflict. His followers position his teachings not as anti-Hindu, but as a return to the original scriptures. He argues that a true God can erase your karmic debt, which is something other gurus deny.
He also rejects practices like idol worship and fasting, calling them man-made rituals that, he says, aren't even supported by the holy books.
And his followers don't just make these claims out of thin air. They use scripture to try and back them up. For instance, they'll cite this verse from the Bhagavad Gita to argue that extreme practices like fasting are explicitly discouraged, which directly contradicts the advice of many other spiritual leaders.
All right, so after addressing all the criticisms, the narrative from his supporters makes a big pivot. They start to present what they see as the positive, tangible impact of his movement, a huge program of social reform.
His supporters argue that he isn't just a teacher, he's a powerful social reformer. They point to 4 key pillars of his work: completely eradicating the dowry system, eliminating caste discrimination within his community, achieving mass de-addiction from drugs and alcohol, and running massive charity initiatives.
Let's just take the dowry-free marriages, for example. They're called Ramani. Get this, they're conducted in just 17 minutes, with absolutely zero dowry and zero extravagant celebrations. It's a pretty radical solution to a practice that has financially crippled countless families in India. And this slide really shows the claimed scale of their charity. Through an initiative called Annaparna, the organization says it has adopted over 10,000 needy families, providing them with free monthly rations. But here's the most remarkable part of their claim. This whole thing is funded not by public donations, but directly by the power of God.
The final piece of their argument is the creation of a truly egalitarian community. Inside the ashrams, they say, there is no VIP treatment. Even his own family members are treated just like anyone else. Everyone, regardless of caste, sits and eats together, which is a pretty stark contrast to the hierarchies of the outside world.
So we're left with these 2 completely irreconcilable portraits. On one hand, a monstrous criminal mastermind, as painted by the media, and on the other, a revolutionary social and spiritual reformer as described by his followers. It really forces us to ask a difficult question. In an age of media trials and powerful counter-narratives, how do we even find the line between perception and reality? What really constitutes the truth?